Let me quickly give you some biographical information about our panel members. I know some of you have been here this morning and have already had the benefit of Dr. Rodriguez's wisdom and Shakira's as well. She'll be back in a minute or so, I imagine. So Lisa Bennett, Mitchell Bennett, joins us from Brownsville. She has lived in the Rio Grande Valley since 1991, so she's an old timer. And she was born in Mexico City. She has master's degrees in international development and public health. And she was once an associate editor of Latin American Press in Lima, Peru. So she's been around. She worked in Central America for a U.S. aid agency, and she co-founded a binational community health worker organization in Matamoros, Brownsville. So she's been trying to work with community-based situations throughout. For some length of time now, she has been working with, for the School of Public Health in Brownsville, that's University of Texas, with community health workers and policy and environmental change. Been working a lot on nutrition issues and related kinds of health issues. She co-facilitates the Collaborative Action Board in Brownsville and is chair of the Brownsville Wellness Coalition. And Dr. Rodriguez works with that as well. She serves on the boards of the Friendship of Women, Valley Baptist Hospital, Brownsville, and Caracara Trails. She rides a bike. Admire admiration for that. Not well. and she volunteers with refugees on both sides of the border. And she also has a garden in her backyard. Yay. So that's Lisa. You've already been introduced to Art Rodriguez. Dr. Rodriguez is the City of Brownsville Public Health and Wellness Director. He has won Robert Wood Johnson Foundation's Culture of Health Prize. He's training in nursing. And he has also won the I.E. Scott Award for Outstanding Contributions to the Environmental Health Profession. I'm just skipping through. There are so many remarkable things about him, but I'm just kind of skipping through the bio information so we can move ahead to our actual program. He was appointed by the Texas Department of Health Commissioner Hellerstadt to the Border Health Task Force, and he talked a little bit about that work earlier. And then I'd like to introduce Shakira Regos. She is Terra Prieta Opreta, Terra Prieta, farm manager, CEO. She is a registered nurse, a farmer, and a mother. She, at her farm, produces produce for a local community-supported agriculture farm, a program, farmers market, wholesale markets, and restaurants. And she co-founded in 2020 the Centley Center for Regenerative Agriculture. And I hope we can hear more about that. It aims to reconnect the Rio Grande Valley community to the land and local food system. And last, I'm going to introduce Esther Carvajal, whom I have known for a couple of decades now, I think, and done many projects with. Esther is also a person with many hats. She's a medical assistant. She's managed a health clinic. She has managed a lot of health programs. She is a community health worker, a promotora, and generally has figured out ways to work in her community to help so many people on the individual, family, and community-wide levels. She's just really impressive. All right. Where are my questions? My name is Anne Millard, and I am with the International Valley Health Institute. I am retired from Texas A&M School of Public Health, and I've had the pleasure of working with a whole string of um, programs here in Hidalgo County. So let me get my questions out. This session is called Cultivating Health Through Food, and we are here to kind of explore the culture of eating and of food choice and food use and how the market works and so on. So culture is a very broad concept, and we're going to address it that way. I know in today's news, the word culture is kind of flippantly thrown around, but we're going to take it seriously here. So my first question for our panel is, please draw on your experience here in the Valley to explore cultural reasons for eating well and eating poorly. And Dr. Rodriguez, would you like to jump?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to be up here today. You know, the word culture is a very powerful word, and I actually looked it up before answering the question because I wanted to make sure that when you think of culture, you think of its peoples and its mannerism, but also organizationally speaking, culture is the way, the values that you have for a mission, how you're going to get the work done, or get from a organization level. Been trying to come up here today and kind of try and answer this humbly is the culture of health and the experience is oftentimes shaped by our own experience and by the way we've been told about what it is about certain or the way they integrate into our life. But at the health, I'm now kind of switching over how the city health department interprets cultivating health culture into what we do. If there's any lessons learned from the pandemic, is that you know health was everything. Wellness was a very powerful antioxidant, for lack of a better word. It was a catalyst for those who were hospitalized, were in the ICU, and those who weren't. And then when you look at the demographic of who those were, is people who had access to the healthy foods and were able to not have diabetes or obesity, it crossed a lot of lines. And I think the culture of health aspect, what we've been doing through the prize with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and my experience as a nurse was that these are complex, and oftentimes when you have complex issues and you're trying to simplify in a way that makes sense, it, the the math itself may drop some pieces of it. And I did bring our nutritionist with us today because one of the Ms. I'll call out Ms. Vanessa Limas because one of the things is as you see in our department, I added the word wellness, the department very intentionally because if I didn't have it in front of me, out of mind, out of sight. And the culture is you got to live it, not just when you want it, but every day. And part of the reasons that I prioritize my funding in the department on the wellness side to physical activity, nutrition, and mental health is because if I'm not going to do it, who else is? So culture is about standing up and doing it for others, standing up and bringing others to the table, and then listening and understanding the subject matter experts that have been down that road and how do we form bridges and form new roads where none have been built before. So cultivating a culture of health for me means being very uncomfortable, living a life of not thinking I know how, but sometimes I'm just a facility. Bring 2, 3 people in a room, and we're not gonna leave until we solve this. If you know the work I did for the plastic bag ordinance, I used to lock people in a room and say we're not gonna leave until we figure those out. And remember, I had environmentalists, HEB, Walmart. I had really high-powered people in the room. We're not gonna leave till we solve it. And my learned lessons from there have been as a culture of health now in a community that We Southmost Road is our taco capital of the art. You know, that's what our citizens say. That's what our citizens say. You know, but the reality is, how do we continue living in an ecosystem that allows a transition? And I often say I want Southmost in 20 years to also be involved with the trails, which we're doing, but the restaurants that are also offering other menu items that you would not see today. So a culture of health means bringing about the change, but you're not bringing the change. The change is coming from within and is being made by the very same people who right now may not have access to certain foods because they've never heard of maybe a turnip or some. I'm being very extreme, um, but we don't know what we don't know until we start having that narrative.
Technology. Okay, got it. So Lisa, would you like to respond to drawing on your experience here in the Valley to talk about cultural reasons for eating well and eating poorly?
Sure. So definitely, I think some keywords that Art mentioned are listening and really trying to lift up the voices of those that we don't. Often here, it's always sort of the same narrative about culture, and I'm definitely not an expert in clearly in culture in the Rio Grande Valley, but I think that there's a narrative that it's a homogenous culture, and I think we know that um, there's so much richness to the history, and it gets washed out by the sort of poor decisions around economic development that we had talked about around we have a history of families that have connections to land and to agriculture, whether um, through farm workers who migrate to the north and come home, and this is their base, through their history of farming in Mexico, whether they're working in agriculture here in the valley, and yet that disconnection that I think we're all concerned about is huge. And I just think about my kids when they were toddlers. They're grown now, of course, but they with their little chubby fingers, before they could even talk or read or anything, they would point to the golden arches or to fast food, and they knew exactly. They would beg for that because we were just bombarded and surrounded by that. And I think that, how beautiful would it be? The tacos on Southmost are awesome. Like, I have no problem with that because that's like real people making real food. But how awesome it would be if we could surround our toddlers and our children with people growing food, and whether in the medians of the highway or in everybody's backyard, and there would be land. Our leaders and officials would make development decisions that would actually be meaningful for the majority of our persistent poverty region. So it's always the same voices being lifted up and defining culture here. And I think the hard part is to really listen to real people. Joaquin talked about it. You can't just say you're going to listen to people. And I work for a university, so believe me, I am not I know that that's a disclaimer for me, and I didn't come from an academic background, and I think oftentimes experts do a lot of damage in this community, and I think we need to understand that listening is really listening and shutting up, and that's why I'm even uncomfortable talking here on this panel, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to work, find those voices that are not being heard, really talk to real people and highlight them and learn about the history of food, understand the positive beauty that we have in our food culture here, and find ways to promote and grow that culture and expose kids to more than just highways and fast food, and understanding where it comes from, and promoting great businesses like taquitas. So
I have been in the valley for almost 15 years. And when I first came, we were not farming at the time. And my husband was working and I was at home. But after a year, I did go back into the medical field, and I worked in the medical surgical floor. And I noticed that there were a lot of people, almost everyone was on like some form of insulin or some type of diabetes medication. Until that point, I didn't realize how widespread the problem was in the community. And I did notice that there were most of the problems that we see in our community are related to how we eat. And so that was a big eye opener that from I was also working as a nurse in Utah before, and there was a big load on for me taking care of patients that I wasn't hadn't been seeing. Like all of my patients are on it, and just managing that, and so that was a big eye opener. And I noticed that in my husband's background, he's Mexican, and his family they do incorporate lots of vegetables. So I think it's you can't stereotype a culture like, oh, they only eat you don't consume vegetables. I know there are lots of people that, so I know there's other issues, not that they it's just not part of the culture, because I've noticed that there are lots of dishes I love and enjoy that incorporate vegetables. I think what I have experienced as a farmer when people come to my stand at the market is there's just they haven't prepared it before, but if you give someone a plate to try prepared, they love it. They love getting free samples at the market. So I think when we talk about do's and don'ts, don't assume that people, they don't know about the vegetables, or they don't enjoy them. I think maybe just they haven't had a chance to be introduced to them or have them prepared. I know that's a big challenge for people when they come and visit us, but if we give them a recipe at the market, they'll take it and they'll come back and say, yeah, that was really good. So I think like has been mentioned, the big multifaceted issue. But I've noticed, yes, we do have a big proportion of our culture here in the that is suffering from diseases related to diet. But I think a lot of people are interested in changing and learning, and given the availability of the food and some ideas on how to prepare it, I think people are open. So I would say the culture is open to trying.
Yeah.
Where to start? Okay. All right. Okay. I have been able, because I'm a medical assistant, I've been able to see both sides. We started as a medical assistant because I wanted to help people. And again, I started seeing that my people were diabetic, were overweight, didn't know what to eat, and then they were doing only as the doctor, you have all these problems, so eat all these medications, and that was not the solution. And I started thinking, okay, we can prevent this. This is preventive. Why are we doing this? And it was because the pharmaceutical market don't want this. They don't want healthy people. They want sick people. And this here in the valley, that's what we have. The rich people are all the medical people. I mean, usually. And it is so hard to beat that. It is so hard. And who are the others? The ones that the HEB, Walmart, the ones that there is no commercial or ad for good tomatoes or broccoli. So who's making the money? And these people generate a lot of income to these regions, and that is why vegetables are not out there. Nobody's making a commercial or not about tomatoes, about vegetables. And yes, it's not about what we have. It's our food, and I'm telling you, I'm saying Mexican because we dominate. Even if other people are coming in, they become Mexicans too. They're Mexicans, we become Mexicans. So we're all Mexicans, no matter where we're coming from. We become Mexicans because we eat here. And yes, we have all this food that it's Mexican, but then we added all of that. So our children eat Mexican plus all this other processed food because the schools do. Pizza, it's healthy. Burgers, hot dogs, corn dogs. It's our healthy food for our kids. And yeah, they have all these vegetables, but kids don't eat them. They don't eat them. And you know, when I came to the United States, it was so hard. I started blowing up because why are we throwing all this food? So I started eating it. And now I can't get rid of it years after. But then again, you know, I said, okay, we can do this. So I became a community health worker. And, you know, thanks to Dr. Millar, we had an institute where we went out there into the colonia. And we started noticing that on research that the only way to change this is implementing the family. Family is so used to. So, you know, homemakers, people, you know, ladies started losing weight. They started feeling good. But the husbands didn't like that. Oh no, you, what's wrong with you? Are you sick? Why are you so flaca? You know, that's not good. So we and our kids, or the bigger they're born, que bonito, you know, very strong, very big and strong. But so guess what? This child will have a heart attack or have diabetes by the time they're 30. But the bigger, the better, because that symbolizes to us as stronger. And we have this thing, only the stronger survives. But that's not the case no more. So we were going in there and we were doing family by family, but then COVID came along. And I was a size 4, believe it or not. So I started with, you know, now I have the kids home. Now I have to quit work. I was middle income. I became lower income, you know, and then I had to reach out for the food bank. Guess what? No vegetables. I had to go from Weslaco all the way to McAllen for the food bank, make long lines to get 1 can of greens, one can of green beans, 1 loaf of bread, and that's it. So what do? We cook a lot of beans, a lot of rice, you know, and a lot of things, a lot of caldo, a lot of stuff. And what are our vegetables? Frijoles, tomate, chile, y cebolla. Those are our vegetables. And right now, then this is what I'm thinking, that after COVID, this is when it's hit. This is when it's hitting the colonias. At the beginning, we could find banks, food banks everywhere. We can't now. And all of those where we were making enough money to survive, now we can't. We're looking, and there's no food. The other day, there was a produce drive. By the time I got there, it hadn't even started. It was like 30 minutes earlier. That line was 30, you know, it was like 2 mile long. And it said, till it lasted. Think I was going to get any? Of course not. And like this, there's a lot of families. The community is hungry and trying to survive because all the cost of everything else is so high that the colonias are hungry. And because we're hungry, we eat, you know, spaghetti, we eat fideo, we eat a lot of rice, we eat a lot of tortillas, we eat a lot of bread. There's no need, we only want to feed our family. So it's sad. And like I was saying, why don't we have the market? You know, the income. We have made a lot of progress. We have now parks. I've seen parks that they want to be healthy. They're trying to walk. They're trying to do things because it's a combo. You can't just eat healthy. You have to walk. You have to exercise. You have to be in peace or recognize that to go walk, you have to leave your problems at home. Have to take care of. Have to find that time to go and just do that. So if we would have a market at the parks, hey, I have time to go shopping. So instead of Walmart, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna go walk too. But I see that there's a lot of options, and just go there and so there's a lot of more work to do. And I wish I could go back. I have to feed my family, so I have to work. Believe it or not, I'm doing vector control right now because I have to do something. But it is hard. It is hard for colonial residents, you know. And I said, I have a car and I had, you know, gas to go all the way to the food bank, but not a lot of people do. And I actually, you know, it's been years and years, and it takes a lot of times and years for a person to understand what's going inside of their body and what is going outside their body. It's a lot of mental, you know, process that has to go through there, and it has to be in a family base. Otherwise, it doesn't. We're cooking for the big people, and we're cooking for the little. Because otherwise, and we can't put it to waste. We can't make a lot of, you know, people food, and then the kids are not going to eat. As it is, a lot of kids are not eating at the schools. but they're not saying, they come home, they not eating anything. They come home and not even breakfast because they don't like the food. So something is not right. Sorry.
Thank you, everybody. Great comment. So we are skipping around through my wonderful list of 4 questions with gay abandon. So congratulations, everybody. You've thrown me off completely. I was going to say that when I first came to the Valley, and I've been here more than 20 years now, people said to me, because they knew I was working in public health, they said, please work on diabetes, please work on diabetes. So I just hated the idea because diabetes is so complicated, and I, as a graduate student, I never understood it. I always avoided it because it was just so complicated. So, of course, I started working on it, and we did end up with a couple of products, and I thought I'd show you these. These are kind of funny, historically speaking. This was a book that was put together by UT and A&M people called Nourishing the Future, and it's the case for community-based nutrition research in the Lower Rio Grande Valley. This was published way back in about 2004 or so. And we all worked on this. So, I mean, you work on things, you take the skills that you've learned and you try to apply them, and they don't quite work that well. So my latest endeavor, which Esther was involved in, is just a cookbook. Recetas de Poder, Energía y Vida, Recipes for Energy and Life from Power versus Diabetes, which was a project we had at the Pulga de Alamo, very community-based, designed by many students at UT Edinburgh, and public health students also from A&M. Everybody threw in their ideas. We tried to do what everybody thought was a great idea, and what a contrast, no? Anyway, I'd like to have some more comments from you, and we will take questions from the audience shortly, but I'd like to give you all 2 up. One is, could you reflect, as I just did in a, very abbreviated manner, what kind of training you got initially and how you got propelled into this area of working on health and food? Because I doubt that any of us were really trained to engage in this, but here we are. So that's one question. And another question is, in 1 sentence, please provide your most useful insight into cultural aspects of cultivating health.
Yeah, I want to try. Okay. Well, there's not actually any training, but the person who want to help people, want to, it's our people, like our Mexicans, and diabetes, pre-diabetes. Pre-diabetes is preventable. So pre-diabetes is the key. If you're pre-diabetic, you don't have to be diabetic. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take family, together, but it can be done. So we try and error. We try so many things, and we're like, okay, we got it. We're going to do this. But then we figure out that it doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't work. Every individual is different. Every body is different. And then once we thought we had the, we say nutrition, and everybody thinks diet. Gotta go on a diet. Gotta go on a diet. So this starts stressing out people. So stress doesn't go with diets, and it has to be first of mind. So we went that way. Okay, let's do this, and then let's do that. And some people were losing weight, and some people were like, I'm not losing. I said, but how do you feel? Or how is your medication? And then again, they go to the doctor. Oh no, you can't do that. You can't eat that because now your medication is gonna be bad for you. We gotta. The only way is to increase your medication. So then we go back again. So it was a fight. It was a fight, and that's how we learned. People had to be open-minded. We had to go through there and open-minded of, okay, either I take medication or I start eating well, or I start eating, and I demand that my medication start, go down or taken off. We had a couple of people who were, the medication was taken up, but it was a lot of work. So that's how we learned. And then when we thought we had it, comes a new research and a new book, it says, oh no, you're doing it all wrong. That's not it. So there we go again. And that's how, and I think we value, we have to value that research does plays a big role. We have to think about why was the research done and how was it done. Does it work for the people? And again, the people in our community are the ones that are going to tell us, does it work? And we're just going to have, it's an ongoing thing. Continue going. And I think my strongest would be, because I'm from the colonia, because I can be on both sides, I can understand people and I communicate with, inglés o español, no importa. We're going to do it. Inglés o español, it doesn't matter, because once we feel that, okay, economics is getting better, whatever, this place right here, the border is always going to, because we're always having new people, new colonias. We're like, no, yeah, we're okay. Colonias are better. But guess what? We have 5 new colonias the same way. We need to start all over again. So we're never going to end. It's an unending job, but we have to keep going, and we have to look for those students. Students are key. They need to continue. They need to, they have to be passionate. We have to let them know that this is an ongoing job. Ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the hard part is that we have to address the system problems, which are huge, which have been mentioned. I mean, the fact that the healthcare industry really doesn't want us to be healthy, and the pharmaceutical industry is profiting off of our lack of health, and I think that's the elephant in the room. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that we don't have to work locally on those things that, we have to push through and try to continue working on initiatives. I think we've learned a lot from failures over the years. I think we have some great programs with great results, but I'm definitely not going to brag about them, because I feel like we have made so many mistakes over the years, and from that we've learned there's so much more to why people are unhealthy. I think there's trauma, there's history of militarization of our area, of people, the way their fear, and there's generational trauma, racism, all of the things that cause a people to suffer. And it's so easy for both the healthcare industry and the kind of the powers that be to blame the victims of that and say, you're just not making the right choice. And one thing is that making good choices means that you have to have access, you have to have the energy. You're working night and day just to literally keep a roof over your house. That's not feasible for you to be. And then you also need to have access to healthy options. And like you're saying, I think people want to. I was sort of surprised because you asked about kind of past training. When I started working at the university, I was doing what I felt were all these exciting things, like a journalist, covering wars. And they told me we're going to work on fruit and vegetables and diabetes. And I'm like, oh, that sounds so boring. That's not, and then I also felt like, and obesity, I felt like that would not resonate with the community. In fact, it might be offensive to the community. And it is, I think, in the way that it was being done initially. So I think listening, learning with humility, addressing the systemic environmental issues at the same time, but we can't give up our sort of local neighborhood issues as well. I think we have to have positive results that we can point to, that in terms of like, what kind of community do we want to live in? Do we want people to be able to walk to a market and purchase their food for a reasonable amount of money, and if they can't purchase it, they could grow it themselves? Is that the vision we want, or do we want to just keep adding lanes to highways that never reduce traffic, and make people more isolated in colonias if they don't have transportation, more isolated from food, and so I think there's just I think there's some things that we've done that are successful that we can point to. Our Tu Salud Si Cuenta program, we had to listen to the community on that. We were pushing nutrition, and what people wanted was exercise options. They were super excited when we would offer a little exercise class, and so that's the hub now of what we do. And I think the other The other thing that was great was the Brownsville Wellness Coalition and our partnership in the early years of opening the first farmers markets in the valley. And then quickly realizing we don't have enough small farmers, like we don't have vendors, we don't know where to get the produce, and creating some of those community garden, urban farm opportunities. But we still have a long way to go. And I think learning from our failures and looking at our failures directly, and finding those voices that we're not hearing is every bit as important as kind of bragging about what works.
My background is in nursing. I never thought that I would be spending all of my time as a farmer and enjoying it. So um, I like I mentioned, my husband, he actually has the background in agriculture. And when we came here to the valley, there wasn't that big supply of like organic or pesticide-free vegetables. So, he decided we're going to start a family garden. And I started getting involved. And that's how I learned with time, just growing food for my family and for myself. And the whole process was like slow, but I mean, I really enjoyed it. We had a small plot. We bought seeds, and I actually planted vegetables I had never tried before. So I was introduced to kale, like salad mixes, and all these things. And my kids, through the process, were eating all these vegetables. So um, that really impacted our diet. So I can see how that could, these community gardens that are being set up, all of those things, like when we participate in growing the food ourselves, we value it more and we want to, incorporate it into our diet. So I started off as a nurse. Now I'm a farmer, and I don't have plans to go back. I think I'm having a much greater impact, teaching and sharing what we've learned and providing the.
I've had quite the journey, and I'll explain what I mean by that. I started out as a paramedic, started out life wanting to be an adrenaline-filled 18, 20-year-old getting into healthcare. And along the way, I became a nurse and a board respiratory therapist, but I was very restless. And then one day, our city manager calls me in and says, the public health director has retired, and you're the closest thing I have to someone who understands the language. And I had a shift, a paradigm, because I had spent my years in healthcare, where healthcare is designed through no fault of anyone or anything, that you spend $1 million to save one life at a time. That's the best way for me to summarize health when you have to. But in public health, I hope the crowd understood, everyone understand this. I'm given $1 to measure per 100,000 people the differences that we make. And to me, that was mind blowing. In everything that I do, and I say that to every time I hire someone come into public health. When I was bringing our whole wellness and nutritional and our physical activity folks, I tell them that story, because in nursing, we sort of live in the minutia, the rate of diabetic, the incidence. To your point, you're right on. But in public health, we really only get dollars. If we hit 1 million, my God, that's gold mine for public health. And I'm saying that truthfully. So for me, it's been a very enlightening journey to know that I would rather deal with $1 in the per 100,000 anytime. Nothing against healthcare. I understand the, but the long-term sustainability, where I see things going, is we really need, and I'm kind of going to integrate my one sentence response into that, is we need to come together and inspire each other so that our legacy is a better healthcare and welfare community, so that we can also become more resilient. And that's the only way that I see us forward. Remove the badges, remove the titles, how do we work ourselves through the system, through the structures, through whatever it is that either is as a plus or a negative. Because always remember that lens different looking at it from the other end. And that would be my answer.
Thanks for all those great comments, everybody. We're kind of waiting for questions to appear. Can I reach that far? Okay, so can you all hear me okay? Yes. Culture influences food preference, but food choices are just as influenced by what is available. For example, today's lunch will limit you to fresh whole food. Oh no. It is impossible to find and afford fresh whole foods in the Rio Grande Valley. How can we influence food choices on a policy level or on a planning level, and how do we advocate for those changes? Shakira, do you mind jumping on? I think you have a lot of thinking done on this.
Excuse me. Could you repeat the question again? Like, I know we spoke about like the choices, having availability.
How can we influence food choices on a policy level or on a planning level, and how do we advocate for those changes?
Right. So, look, I mentioned before with our small farm and on the outside of the city, I mean, if you have policies that encourage urban farming, obviously that's going to increase access to food and the choices that we have. And there's other policies that impact small local businesses as well that we can lobby for and support for farmers in a way that, you might not think have a direct impact, but they do. So, for example, like the taxes that are charged, property taxes, and how that affects farmers. And if someone wants to go into farming, but they have to wait a year to get an exemption and they're paying heavy taxes, they're not going to want to start farming, for example, or if there's other issues that affect farming that we don't think about, and they're all on a policy, a higher level.
Thanks. And Art, could you please jump on this question too? Because I know you were talking with me earlier about this intersection of policy and community work and everything that you've been working.
I want to say that it really is a collaborative bring that together. And then I'm looking at Elisa, and then I look at Council Wellness Coalition. The partnerships, the amount of work that it takes to be able to even say we're bringing food to is not a one person. It really takes the ability to connect to the farmer, the ability to connect. I've heard the word transportation a lot, and I myself did not realize that transportation was such a big issue, but that seems to be one of the major themes. And come figure, I'm finding out that our doing transportation 2023 was not the biggest conversation topic. But I think we always learn something, and it is these forums that connect us to each other that allow the conversation forward. So to the point of the food summit and why it is that we're trying to build resilience, I think that the end game is, as long as we have that mission and those values and how we journey ourselves through them and have that. I heard the word participatory leadership earlier today in the first session. I think that's what we all need to have, is that participatory leadership, to show up, be present, be able to enable your local farmer, and what are their gaps, why aren't they able to get their food to the farmers market. I can say one of our first issues initially, we couldn't get farmers to show up, and now it kind of makes sense. But I think just as an outsider, because I'm in public health, not in the farming, those are very real issues. And how do we now begin to have conversations at a city level, state level, and how do we bring down any red tape that we don't even?
Thank you very much. You know what? the other two. I'm going to cut you off at the juggler and ask you to answer this other question, which is, this area has the highest concentration of fast service restaurants in the country. Not only that, we also spend the highest amount per visit. Did not know that. To what extent do local governments and planning commissions share in encouraging healthy eateries instead of fast food restaurants? What can we do to change this reality? All right.
I was just going to say, kind of an extension to that answer, I think, we just take for granted that the large corporations, or even the Stripes or the Elon Musks, or, everything that they're just courted by our local policymakers. And I think Joaquin in the last session from today said that the thing that can really change this is our activation of people like you and me, and also people that are not in the room, really holding our leadership and local policymakers and local elected officials accountable for, not business as usual, not giving all of the perks to the same, creating smart planning policies that reward small farmers, with tax breaks or whatever it is, whatever the incentive is, and de-incentivize businesses that are coming into our community that don't serve our community well, that are not benefiting our people. That's really supposed to be the role of government. The role of government is not to support, your buddies who are making money doing something like building more highways and more fast food restaurants. The role of government is supposed to be to serve the majority of the population, and the majority of our population does not benefit from that type of development. There are a list of policies that can be both related to food and infrastructure and transportation that, we could be pushing our lawmakers, but, the reality is we don't have the energy sometimes because everybody's just trying to survive. But I think, that really is the only solution, is getting people involved, getting people elected. And that's why I love the kind of work that grassroots organizations like Lupe are doing. And I think we need to really support that type of effort.
All right, I agree with her. Yes, and I think people don't know that they can fight for this, that they can do things. And but I have seen a decrease of people who go to fast food restaurants, and the people who are working because they don't have time, because it's only given 15-20 minutes from their work to go in and get that food. They don't have time to prepare. They don't have time. And if they go home, all they see is fast food. In the refrigerator, it's all fast food. There's no vegetables. But people have found a way we have La Pulga de Alamo. Everybody's familiar with this. So you get entertainment, you get to dance, you get to hear music, you get to buy your fruits and vegetables, and you buy everything else in between. So this people have found, the community, the colonias have found a way to combine all this and have a family time. They have found a way. So how can we learn from this? How can we bring this? This is our community. This is the colonias getting together to have all in one place. And they, the money they spend to go buy the soap, whatever they need to buy, you can find anything in Colonia. I mean, in the flea market, anything. So they have found a way to be all together in family, spend the time that they need to be as family, and get all the things that they need at a cheaper price. Yes, I mean, a sack of oranges, 10 are not going to be good, but then you have the rest. But then again, you have the chickens, you have the dog, you have the cat. They're all going to eat, and it's not going to go to waste. Somebody's going to eat it. And if not, you just blend it. Blend it to put some milk in it and some sugar, and that's it. It's good. That's it. And that's what matters. It's not so much if it's organic or if it's not organic. It doesn't matter. The colonias just want to eat. That's it. And then as the best of their knowledge, is fruit and vegetables. We're going to blend it, like I said, with sugar and milk, and it's good. And that's how we feed our families. So maybe we can learn from that. What are they doing that they're all getting together? And it's not 1 or 10 cars. It's hundreds of cars every day or every weekend getting together. And then their mental state, by the time they get out of there, they feel they did something as a family. They did something with the community. But they're either compadres, and they went to get some exercise, and they went, they ate a spiro papa, but they walked it off. But this is fun for them, and this is healthy.
So I thought your idea earlier was a genius idea of having a farmer's market or a portable van that brought food, vegetables to the park where people are already exercising. Yeah, 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 very cool. Yeah. There is one more question, and if anybody has a burning desire to answer it, very different. In an effort to preserve the food culture in new recipes that are passed on from generation to generation, how can we inform our local community about the ingredients and what's causing diabetes?
I don't have the answer, but I'm just going to start talking and other people can answer. I mean, I think there's been some really good models that obviously it's, little by little. The Brownsville Wellness Coalition, in addition to their mobile markets that are now going to different places in the community to sell produce, and they accept SNAP and other incentive programs. So they're really trying to serve folks where they are. I think the Sustainable Food Center out of Austin had a curriculum, a healthy cooking curriculum called La Cocina Alegre. And the Brownsville Wellness Coalition was able to adapt that curriculum to be both friendly to people with diabetes and also adding more local, culturally appropriate recipes to that. And we've had some really good success, and that's Lou Beth here who runs our Salud y Vida program, working with people with diabetes uninsured from a lot of the clinics in the valley, and that add-on to that program, which is community health worker led, that's been such a popular class because they get to actually, get their hands in there and make the recipes, and they get the ingredients. So, but that's kind of small scale because you can only sustain so many classes. Now that during the pandemic that went online, and I think that's actually been good. It's expanded, and people who can access internet and are able to, and of course they're in Spanish, English, they can actually be in there, kind of try the recipes out. So that's not for everyone, but that's one small step. I think that type of getting away from this traditional. You don't learn about food systems in a classroom. You don't. You learn about it by getting in the garden and digging, or preparing the food with your abuela. That's the way we learn about food and we experience food. So more opportunities like that.
I just want to say, I'll close it out by saying, we need to be future, but that comment itself, it's not that our traditions were wrong, but we didn't know about art 50, 100 years ago. We now know better that science will shorten our life, and it's how do we engage in that difficult. It may sound simple, change menu item, but when you've done it this way, that's the change management portion that I talked about. It you need to be inclusive in that conversation. Really come to the table ready to have but it can be done.